Good morning and welcome to today is February 21st, State Government Committee, and we will begin with a roll call. Mr. Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Representatives Alexander, Bricken, Butler, Carringer, Chisholm, Dixie, Haston, Holsclaw, Hurt, Jernigan, Johnson, Leatherwood, Littleton, McCalman, Miller, Pearson, Powell, Powers, Rudder, Terry, Vice Chair Eldridge, Chairman Kiesling.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have quorum.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Appreciate it. All right, members, do any of you have any announcements or personal orders at this time before we begin? Yes, we do. Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have a group of East Tennessee realtors that are here today. I have Kimberly Bell from Union County and a group of East Tennessee realtors. If you all would welcome them, we're glad to have them here today.
Very good. Thank you all for being here. Yes, thank you, Chairman Powers. Any further announcements or question? All right. Yes, we do. Chair Lady Carringer, you're recognized.
I just saw him out there. I'm like, wait, I think I see a familiar couple faces. Our city of Knoxville Mayor, Indian Kincannon, is here with us, along with Fiona McNally. So we welcome you all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, let's review our this day in history, and we've got a big old calendar, and we need to get started on it as quick as possible. It is this day in history, February 21st, and on this day in history, the year 1800, the USS Essex becomes the very first U.S. naval vessel to cross the equator. In 1878, New Haven, Connecticut was the city where the world's first telephone book was published and issued. That was 1878. 1948, NASCAR. It was on this day that the National Association for Stock Car Racing is officially incorporated. And in 1929, who remembers this day? In 1929, throughout a 13-hour period, Nashville received 15 inches of snow. What a day that would have been. Famous birthdays, only have one today. It was the birth year of 1946 for Alan Rickman. He is the author known for his role in Harry Potter. And to conclude, our own native, Miss Dolly Parton, the year 1981, she came in with the #1 song today. It was named after a movie. Yes, you're correct. 9 to 5. 9 to 5. All right, let's get started. And we are going to, with the gavel, we're going to start on, we're going to mention on item 1, House Bill 1684. It has been requested to be rolled for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Gavel. All right. And next we have item number 2, House Bill 1682. And who is presenting that? Miss 1692. I'm sorry, Chairman Farmer. And you're recognized, sir. I see no amendments. Go right ahead, sir. We got a motion and a second.
Yeah. Well, good morning, members and Mr. Chairman. Happy to be here. I've got an administration bill on behalf of the Department of Tourism. I have Commissioner Yazell here in case you have any questions for him. In regards to this, what this does is provide some protections to the department and most importantly to businesses and folks looking to come to Tennessee to work, with motels, hotels. For example, I've got Dollywood in my district, things like that. Provide some protections for their information that may be negotiated and given to the Department of Tourism. A great example is this one. For example, the Super Bowl right now is coming. They scheduled that out all the way to 2027, right? So we'd all guess that there's probably negotiations going on for years after that as well, right? In Nashville is going to have a new stadium. So this would provide a 10-year protection for folks with regards to those negotiations, for example, for the Super Bowl coming up. So this is what this bill does. That's just a broad overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we are going to allow a couple of questions before we get to testimony. Chairman, we do have some testimony on this one. Any questions to the chairman at this moment? I see none. Let's go out of session. We'll go out of session, and we are going to look out there to Miss Deborah Fisher. Deborah, come on up here, and you know the routine. Introduce yourself. And we are going to put you on the clock for 3. And I know you can do it. You've done it many, many times.
have.
Go, Deborah.
Thank you, committee. Deborah Fisher, Tennessee Coalition for Open Government. We are fine with almost all parts of this bill. The provision that we have questions about is C1 and C2. That provision allows the tourism commissioner to keep confidential on a case-by-case basis the department's records or information that he deems sensitive, which is a subjective and vague definition and could easily be used to hide information. It's not good policy, we don't think, to allow one person, a single person, so much control to determine what he chooses to keep confidential of state public records. So this provision, C1 and C2, says the record that's deemed sensitive can be confidential for 10 years, which, by the way, is beyond the retention requirement for many types of records. It doesn't put limits on those types of records. So while it may be related to negotiations for the Super Bowl, it could be anything. Performance audits, consultants' reports. The bill doesn't define that. And that's really what our issue is. If there are 2 other provisions in the statute that we're good with, B, which allows for agreements and all supporting documentation about those agreements, i.e. negotiations, to be confidential until the agreement is signed. And then the other provision, which is a very standard provision, has to do with all the information that businesses give to the tourism department, proprietary information, trade secrets. Dollywood's going to build a new roller coaster in 3 years, capital plans, all of that stuff, marketing information or analysis, anything that business gives would be confidential under D, something that is standard we have no issue with. We're mostly concerned with the broad, vague definition, have suggested either that C1 or 2 could come out or just be modified to what exactly it is that you want confidential so that you know what you're closing and the public knows what is being closed, and it doesn't allow for that vagueness. I know, okay, 1 minute. The department said it modeled this off of an exemption that was passed in 1988 for ECD, but this sensitive information exemption actually lasts longer than the one that ECD has, which lasts for only 5 years, and also has a broader definition. The ECD definition is very much oriented to things that would hurt the ability of ECD to close a deal. This definition of sensitive is just anything that might adversely impact, anything that we're supposed to do under the law. So it's just entirely broad and not standard, not how this legislature has dealt with exemptions before. It's very out of the ordinary, and we hope that it can be amended. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Deborah. Good job. Okay. Any questions? No, wait, sit tight. Any questions to Deborah? Yes, we do. Chairman, Dr. Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming and testifying. Are there specific amendments or specific wording that you would like to have changed? You said you just mentioned you'd like to either have it taken out or potentially amended. Can you provide us with something
Ms. Fisher.
specific?
Yes, and we did talk with the commissioner. I did talk with the commissioner about, I think it was 3 weeks ago, and for about a week, and then they decided they didn't want to take C1 or C2 out. And my suggestion, I don't have specific language because I don't exactly know what they want closed, but if they want something specific closed, I would suggest changing the language to be about that, about that specifically instead of something broad. So I think it's sort of up to the department to say exactly what they want closed. It's not already closed through the other exemptions that are in this bill.
Follow up, Chairman Terry.
I'm good, thanks.
He says he's good. Yes. Chairman Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Um, In this legislation for a sensitive nature that its disclosure would, they use the term adversely impact as a definition.
Right.
Do you know what term ECD uses?
I do.
And I believe you mentioned something to me the other day.
Ms. Fisher, you recognize.
I can get that. I have it here. For ECD, it is would seriously harm the ability of this state to compete or conclude agreements or contracts for an economic or community development. That's in Title 4, 3, 730.
Back to you, Chairman Leatherwood.
So changing the definition of sensitive nature to what's in the bill now to what you just read, which mirrors what ECD does, would that satisfy some of your concerns with
would-
that?
It would-
Deborah, to you.
Thank you. I think that that would be an improvement. I think also the 10 years is a problem and the retention of the records is a problem. And those aren't addressed in the ECD exemption, which that was 1988. It was a long time ago. So I wasn't around. But I think that the ECD definition is broad, but the tourism definition is broader.
Chairman, follow up.
And also you mentioned one person making this determination, the commissioner. It says the commissioner and the attorney general.
Mhm.
Is that the same as ECD or different than ECD? Who makes the determination? with
Ms. Fisher?
ECD?
My understanding from just reading the bill outright is that the commissioner makes the determination and has to get affirmative agreement from the AG's office.
How does this differ from ECD?
No, it's the same.
Oh,
Is that a wrap for you, Chairman? All right, we have Representative Powell. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had some of the same questions that were just answered, but I wanted to follow up on one thing.
Okay.
You talked about ways this could be harmful, I guess, to the public. And I do have concerns when we've entered into these agreements and contracts in good faith with different companies, and then tax dollars are allocated. And those companies are oftentimes not fulfilling those agreements, and oftentimes let off the hook. And we have very little ability to claw back. Are those the kind of issues you're concerned about, or what are some of the negative impacts that you see arising from this language as it
Ms.
is?
Fisher.
Yes. And so this exemption goes at sort of the core of the transparency issues, in that it deals with money that the state spends, which is probably one of the most important and universally agreed upon areas that I think most lawmakers want transparency. But you gave an example of, something goes awry and the company doesn't fulfill their agreements. And sensitive nature could basically be something like bad publicity, right, for the department. Or so could, what they didn't do or the performance measures that weren't met, could those be kept confidential? I think they could under this bill, because it's such a broad definition. And I think that not only does the public have a right to know what went wrong, and we should know what went wrong because you want to improve it for the future, right? Because you can only deal with what happens in the future. Lawmakers should know what's wrong. It shouldn't be kept from lawmakers either. And this would be confidential under the law. I mean, lawmakers want access to executive department records like that to be able to pass good legislation. So
Representative Powell, back to you.
Just one more follow-up to go off my colleague from Shelby County's questioning. Have you ever had concerns with the sharing of information from ECD? Because I know you referenced them as you said you didn't really have issues with the way their code reads, that section of the code. Have there been instances where you feel like there should be more availability from that department?
Ms. Fisher.
yes, and I'm not saying that I don't have issues with their exemption. I think that is also broad. And I know it's been used, for example, to get when there was an offer for Amazon to come here, and they did not, the original headquarters, and that was not gotten. And that was, I believe, my understanding from journalists who worked on that, that was kept confidential under the 5-year, even after it was all finished. So other problems with ECD, I believe, have been in the comptroller's audits that have, they've done 2 audits of ECD and even said that they weren't being upfront about jobs created. If you go to their website right now, on any given deal, it'll have jobs, but that's actually the jobs promised, not created. So sometimes that created information in the data that you need to make sure things are going right. I mean, there may be other things that the company does and creates good economic development and spinoff and stuff, but did they live up to the terms of the deal? Sometimes that information is not easy to get and not gettable.
Representative Powell? Okay. He says he's through, and Ms. Fisher, I don't think anyone else needs you at this time. So
No.
just kidding. You know that. We're buddies. You know that. Thank you for your time, Deborah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, also, members, we also are going to recognize, or at least offer, the commissioner. Our commissioner is here along with his assistant, Mary Catherine. Do I see any interest in them appearing to the table here from you all? Any questions? Yes, okay. Commissioner, would you mind coming up? You and Mary Catherine, you all have been, I might add, they have offered their time today at the table. So it's not that we're doing just an instantaneous rebuttal here, if we can call it that. But if you will, you know the routine, Commissioner. If you would, please identify yourself and your guest, please.
Mark Ezell, and I'm the Commissioner of Department of Tourist Development for the state of Tennessee. And I have Mary Caitlin Price, our legislative liaison.
All right. Thank you. Any questions to the Commissioner? Yes, we do. Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for right here. Yeah, thank you for coming today. Can you just walk me through a process where there would be something that would be considered of sensitive nature and how you would determine that would adversely impact your department's ability to carry out your statutory functions, and how you would go about getting the Attorney General opinion on that?
Yes, good question. And what we have done in the last 5 years, and I hope you've seen the success that we've been able to have in the tourism industry, the last 5 years of the top 40 states, the fastest growing. Why that's important is the industry is delivering about $600 million to the budget, more than it was 5 years ago to the general fund. And so we're really trying to work on the business of tourism. What that includes are, would you know that there are 36 counties in the state of Tennessee, and we're very data driven. That's one of the things we've added to our team, that 36 counties do not have a 50-room hotel. So one of the things that we are working in our rural communities that we're really excited about is trying to talk to hotels, deal with feasibility studies, trying to encourage them on why data could be important for those. And so those are the types of companies that come in on a rural side. And then you've got airline services. So we're working with a lot of our larger airports on international and certain direct domestic flights. A lot of that information, again, that we work with the destination marketing organization or a leading employer that also could be supportive in how we do promotional dollars. One thing we would also point out is that the legislature every year gets a copy of all of our spending, all of our grants that we produce come out. But on things like the Mega Event Fund, which again has been given to our department 2 years ago, we're literally talking about events that are in 2030, 2031, 2032. And that's why we moved it from the 5-year to potentially 10 years, because those kinds of negotiations have to be protected. And they are protected in those competing states that we deal with, like Florida and Texas and others that are competing. They protect that confidential nature of the companies that are working with us or the cities that are working with us. And then once we make a grant, then that grant information gets told to you and at the proper time gets told to the public so that it's not adversely impacting negotiations. So those are just 3 examples, but there are many examples of times where we're doing destination development. The companies want to work with us to help us do the best spend of a taxpayer's money, and we need to protect them. And right now, tourism does not have any protections. That's why we chose the ECD work, because we're doing economic development throughout the state.
Follow up, Dr. Terry.
Thank you. And so those are kind of some generic things that might be sensitive, and maybe you can't say anything specifically that might be sensitive, but that if you could, that'd be great. But also, how do you go about determining that it adversely impacts your statutory functions, and how do you get the AG? How's that process for them to agree with you that yes, it impacts you?
Commissioner.
Well, what we'd like to do is be able to, we use the word negatively or impacting, adversely impacting, because we've got CEOs. I was on the phone with Dollywood. It's a public record that Dollywood went over 3 million visitors 2 years ago. It's about to be public what it is for this year. But what we want to do is share about the information of how they're doing their marketing plans, just like Disney works with Orlando and with Florida. But Dollywood is not allowed, and Eugene Naughton, their CEO, was a perfect example for me to quote today. We cannot, without these protections, keep their proprietary information, and we want to be helping Dollywood because Dollywood is such an economic impact driver for the state.
Dr. Terry.
And can you talk about the AG process?
Yes, well, what we would do is, and again, we haven't come to that situation yet, but our feeling was that if we receive the public records, then we would go and discuss why or why not this material would need to have a protection for the sensitivity of those things. And then we would reach out to the AG's office and also say, does this pass a reasonableness test for that protection? We know some of these mega event funds have to be protected during those multi-year negotiation processes.
Could we do one more?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, he says he's good. Let's
Thank you.
move on to Representative Powell. You're recognized.
Thank you. And I appreciate you stopping by my office yesterday to visit and talk more about this.
Yes.
So I want to be clear here. You've had businesses that have come to you that are looking to bring these events to Tennessee and just different parts of our communities. And they said, because of your laws, we feel like, we have issues with the way that your laws are written, that, there's a lack of privacy. And is that why you're seeking this?
Commissioner.
Yes. So a couple of years ago, when we were starting through this process and involving, I didn't realize that tourism did not have statutorily protective for their industries and for their negotiations in that process. And we are just beginning the mega event process. In fact, we just posted online for that because we think we've got a group we've been talking to, and they are going to be involved with us. That's why these protections are essential for us to do our fiduciary responsibility of giving out that money for the mega event fund.
Representative Powell.
And one last follow-up question. So obviously, a lot of times these negotiations take place in tandem with local governments and communities where these events are actually going to be at.
They do.
This doesn't really speak to that process, but are there any restrictions in what those entities are able to disclose, or is this strictly for your department?
Commissioner.
Good question. And it's for the information that comes into us that, again, needs the protection. And then we have to massage that information because we're putting that with additional pieces that we might participate in. So how the local group deals with their information, this does not cover that, but it's literally once we receive that information that has a sensitivity or proprietary information, that we protect that during the negotiation.
Is that a wrap,
process.
Rep? Thank you. Thank you, Representative Powell. And let's move on to Chairman Leatherwood. You're recognized.
Well, I think you probably heard from the previous testimony. Would y'all be open to changing the definition of sensitive nature to reflect what's currently in ECDs and what was read out?
Commissioner.
I haven't studied the detail of it, except that we had the discussion in your office, and it says sensitive nature that adversely impacts. And that's what we're trying to protect, is that kind of information. So it seemed reasonable that our definition that we worked with the Lee administration on made appropriate sense. And then there were additional things that needed to be done for strategic marketing plans and some of those things instead of manufacturing. So we made some small adjustments because our work includes destination development, but it includes a lot more.
Follow up, Chairman?
Yes. So would coming closer to what ECD says seriously harm as opposed to adversely impact? Would making that change seriously harm what
Commissioner.
y'all are trying to do as opposed to adversely impacting what they would like to do if you kept adversely impacting rather than seriously harming is the definition?
Well,
Y'all
I,
follow that? I mean,
What-
I
what-
don't
what we would say
necessarily
is-
see the significant difference
Yes.
between the two if you can have a kumbaya moment with people that have concerns with your legislation.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir. I think I understand your question. And to be honest, what we are focused on is how do we work with that industry to help us? And so I think they would want to make sure that their sensitive proprietary trade secret information would not be adversely impacted. And that's why we've used the words adversely impacted. Again, we are desirous of the industry working with us because it can provide jobs, it can provide economic development, and it can provide opportunity, especially for a lot of these communities or for some of these economic impact items. So those words are interpreted by the CEOs of those organizations to make sure, do I have protection to pursue and to work with the state of Tennessee and those cities and communities? So we think that's a good word. We want to mostly get a yes, I will give you data. I will help you do your best job to spend taxpayer dollars correctly. So that's why adversely impact seems to be a good word, but I would almost say, sir, that would fall to what do CEOs or others that we want to work with us, what would they say? And I like the word severely impact. It's a comforting word on why they would do business in Tennessee.
Thank you, Commissioner. One more, Chairman.
Yeah.
We need to keep moving, please. And
Another good point that I thought came up is that, I understand why you need the 5 + 5 years because some negotiations, especially Super Bowl big ones, take longer, but that this could exceed the retention, legal retention time for public records. Is there ever a scenario? I would think these are ongoing records that, until the deal is signed, I don't know when that retention period starts. It seems like it would start when the deal is signed, at which point the records start becoming public. But is there ever a scenario where some of these records could meet the retention time and disappear, be destroyed just in the normal course of business and never become public?
Commissioner.
Good question. We probably haven't run out all the scenarios on that, but what I would tell you is if a deal is open, we need the deal to happen. And the mega event fund, for example, is going to be, those funds will be committed, but only done once the event happens. And so it's a pretty certain thing that record would need to stay open and available.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Representative Butler. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, I appreciate you coming by the office yesterday. And I, like my colleague here, have some questions on that. If the state is expending resources for a survey or study or anything, my concern is we could say that that's going to cause undue harm or whatever the words you want to choose. And if my feeling is if the state of Tennessee invests money into something, then the taxpayers should have access to see that information, whatever we spend it on. Now, I understand if we're in the middle of a deal, I'm not wanting to negate that deal. I support that deal. My concern is, and my colleague brought up an excellent point, if if the records are supposed to be kept for 5 years and we have a 10-year period, are the records been destroyed before they're even available for public?
Yeah.
I mean, would you be opposed to some type of amendment in that instance that would allow, if the records request doesn't go to the 10-year period, that is extended to match or even exceed it by a year?
We don't anticipate that type issue coming up. A perfect example is what's happened at Brushy Mountain State Prison. That work has been part of the reason why Morgan County has come out of being distressed. We continue to want to work with them. Right now, we want to dive deeper into their customer base and some of those things so that we can be more supportive of those. And what I would remind you is every year we come for budget request, and then every year we provide all grants are provided to you. And then that information right now, we have Assistant Commissioner Beecham making check presentations throughout the state. So those kinds of pieces are things that we always and will be available to you and then to the public once those funds are distributed. Because again, we're trying to help promote tourism and how we help communities learn how to take that visitor spend and save Tennesseans taxes.
One more, Representative Butler, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we're on the same page. The tourism dollar is the most valuable dollar we can collect because we're not having to put in all these things and spend all these monies.
Right.
But I'm going to go back to my question. Can we modify this in a way that would allow that record retention to be at the same time frame or longer than the 10 years or the 5 years? So if the record retention is 5 years and we have 5 years worth of protection for confidentiality reasons, which we need, I'm not opposed to that, but I wouldn't want the records to be destroyed in the normal course of business, as he said, and then they're not be available to the public when the time comes.
Yeah, we wouldn't either. And what we would tell you is we wouldn't be trying to protect something if the negotiation process had been disclosed and done. So we again, the mega event program is the primary piece we think would cause us. We want people to know how Tennessee's investing in tourism, and that's why those information pieces would be done. So we haven't dealt with the question about retention records being destroyed, but in anything that's 10 years, the only reason we need it out there to be protected is because the negotiation process is still going on. So we wouldn't want to destroy those records, but we'd be open to trying to see how we can protect that. That's not our intent at all.
One more, Representative Butler,
Thank you,
please.
Chairman, with your patience. I would appreciate us looking at that, and it's not as a commissioner, we're not concerned about you, but we don't know who the next commissioner would be. And I'm not suggesting that they would be doing something shady,
Right.
but we have to plan for worst case scenario. And unfortunately, a lot of the laws and things that we pass are not for the 95% of the people that are doing it right.
Right.
It's for the 5% of the people that are trying to do it wrong.
Got it.
So, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions in? I see none. So, thank you, Commissioner and
Thank you.
Caitlin, Mary Caitlin. We're going to thank you for your time today. And now we have a request by Representative Powell. We will defer to we will go out of session again, and we're going to refer Representative Powell to our council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, so my question to legal was my colleagues questioning about public records. Could you speak to how long public records are maintained for? Because I know we want to make sure they're not destroyed. Like what is in the code, the statute around public
Council
records?
Monday.
Thank you, Matt Mundy from legal. I don't know what the specific retention requirements are for different categories of public records. I assume that they're different for different things, but in terms of the destruction of public records may be transferred to the state archives, and the state librarian and archivist may destroy originals of such records, but after they've been microfilmed or converted to microfilm media. At the local level in 107404, the County Public Records Commission has the right to authorize the destruction of any and all public records as defined in 107403, which are required by law to be retained when such records have been photocopied, photostated, filmed, microfilmed, or preserved. There are some exceptions to that requirement to document or microfilm or photograph, or probably contemporaneously, they make electronic copies of most of the documents that they destroy. It doesn't mandate the making a copy of certain temporary records and working papers as defined under a particular provision of code.
Representative Powell, follow up.
Just a follow-up here for legal. So if we're looking at a 10-year span, do you think it was protected in the code where somebody could not go in and destroy records that date back 10 years or extend beyond that, so that if somebody did want to look at these records 10 years after, that would still be accessible?
Mr. Mundy.
Thank you, Matt Mundy, for the record. Just speaking in the context of the bill that we're dealing with, I think that the requirements to maintain those documents confidentially for a 5-year period, which may be renewed for an additional 5-year period, I think they would be required to maintain copies of those confidential records that they deem to be of a sensitive nature. I don't think that they could destroy those records.
Follow up, Representative Powell. He says no. And we now turn our attention to Chairman Terry, recognized,
thank
to
you.
council.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Speaking of the affirmative agreement with the Attorney General, is there something in statute or something where if there's an AG's opinion that says this would be statutorily adversely impact the department, that we as legislators would have access to an AG's opinion or something relative to that?
Mr. Mundy.
Matt Mundy, for the record. Generally, AG's opinions are published in public documents, so I think that you would have access to that. I'm not aware that the Attorney General private opinions.
Chairman.
So would this affirmative agreement be an opinion that they are putting forth, or how would we get access to that?
I don't
agreement?
think the bill specifies the nature of the agreement or whether it's even put in writing. I think that would be between the department and the Attorney General to determine how they would want to address the agreement. I don't presume that it would be verbal, but I think that would be probably a better question for the department.
Dr. Terry.
I'm good. Thank you.
Follow up. He says he's through. Any further questions to our council now? Yes, we do. Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not a question, just a recommendation to the sponsor. Would you consider rolling this for a week?
We are still out of session. So, yeah. Okay. Any further questions to council now? Yes. Okay. Chairman Leatherwood, to council.
Thank you. You know, as former register, and we did take over responsibility of archives, I know there are different classifications of documents, and permanent records are just that, permanent records. But there were also several categories of records with different retention times. I don't remember all those, but you mentioned working papers. And so as they're going through the negotiation process, trying to get to that final contract, I would think those could be deemed working papers, which would not be microfilmed, which would not be considered permanent records. And I don't remember if it's 3, 5 years or what, but there were different categories, because I know we would go to departments with storage problems and say, well, why are you holding on to all of these boxes of this material that can be destroyed? And they would have to go through Public Records Commission and get signed off for that. So you get into the area of, I guess, the department, the players determining the definition of those records, which could play a part here and make a difference on how long they're held and whether or not they are.
Now, is that a
destroyed.
question or a statement?
Is that true?
Council, Mr. Mundy. Mr. Mundy.
I would ask you to rephrase the question, but I'll just
Based
try
on
to answer the
different
best I
types
can.
of
Chairman
records would
Leatherwood,
have different types of
it's-
records have
it's
different retention
conceivable-
periods, and all records are not permanent records.
Sure, that is correct, and it would not be up to me to categorize those records and say how they would be categorized as permanent records or temporary records or working papers. but certainly different records are subject to different retention requirements. But as I understand this bill, the requirement to maintain these documents confidentially that are sensitive for a 5-year period, I think implies that they wouldn't be able to destroy them. And of course, there is a process where they would go through a public records commission, either at the state or local level, I think, for the purposes of trying to destroy those records. And by and large, I think most of the records there's a requirement that there's a digital copy of some kind be made for those.
Have you got it, Chairman? Is that good? Chairman Leatherwood, any further? Nothing further. Okay, any further? I see none. We are going back into session. Thank you, Mr. Mundy, for your time. Back to you, Chairman. You never dreamed that you'd be on the camera for 45 seconds delivering a bill, did you, sir?
No,
You're
sir.
recognized.
No.
45 minutes, I'm sorry.
I just renew my motion and ask for a favorable vote, Mr. Chair, committee.
The sponsor renews his motion. Any further? Yes, we do. Chair Lady Littleton. She calls for the question. I see no objection. So we are ready to vote. Those in favor of House Bill 1692, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. And you, Chairman, are headed to calendar and rules, sir. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Item number 3 has been, members, please note, it has been rolled for 2 weeks. And that's House Bill 1887. Also, item number 4, House Bill 2088, has been rolled for 2 weeks. And that brings us up to item number 5, House Bill 2828 by the lovely leader, Karen Kemper. And leader, I see no amendments. So we are going to, and I've got a motion and a second. So you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr.
Ma'am.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Members, House Bill 2828 establishes the African American Cultural and Historical Grant Fund to be administered by the Tennessee Historical Commission. The purpose of the fund is to support capital projects at facilities in the state that highlight the contributions, culture, and history of African Americans. Money in the fund may also be used by the Tennessee Historical Commission for program administration, marketing expenses, and program evaluation. However, such expenses must not exceed 5% of the total amount appropriated in any fiscal year. Subject to the availability of funds, the commission shall allocate and disperse grants to entities and facilities to effectuate this bill. The commission must establish and publish guidelines for applications, including eligibility and the awarding of grants. However, priority for grants must be given to projects that encourage the design and construction of new facilities or the renovation of existing facilities in the area with the greatest cultural significance in which no facility exists. Enhance the beauty or aesthetics value of facilities named for significant African Americans, or restore facilities to the National Registry of Historic Places. This bill requires the commission to submit an annual report to the Finance, Ways, and Means Committee of both the House and Senate by March 1st, 2025, and by March 1, each subsequent year after the program is in effect. This bill authorizes the commission to promulgate rules to effectuate this bill. I stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Very good.
And committee.
Thank you, leader. Any questions to Leader Kemper? Yes, well, we've got a question called on the bill. Hold on there. We'll wait just a moment and we'll turn our attention to Chairman Bricken. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the intent of this legislation. Do we have anybody from the Historical Commission here in the audience?
No one, Chairman, that has asked to be, and you know the rule, we've got a
Understood.
24-hour request out, so we did not receive.
Well, I'm going to digress a little bit. We've had several historical markers damaged in our district in the over the last year, and I was talking to Miss Campbell. I think she's on the historical commission, and I discovered how poorly funded the historical commission is. And the lead time to get a replacement for a historical marker, like almost a year and a half, and it costs $3,000 or $4,000 to get a historical marker put up. So I was just trying to somehow tie in. I mean, here, the funding for this, and how that might, I know this is for a particular purpose for African American markers or identification, but we have a whole issue across the state on this, and I guess it's outside the scope of this bill, but we certainly have issues dealing with historical commission that I think should be addressed, and so we'll leave that for another time, I guess. And so that was more of a statement.
That was a statement. Do you have a question, Chairman? And I'm not trying to be cute. You know
I
that.
understand. No, I just want to get that on the record a little bit. To the sponsor, the question.
Yes, leader.
And I guess when I read this bill, the only thing, and I know it's brought forth in good faith and good merits, and I'm going to say this, and I hope it comes across okay. Things like this, I always wonder, are we furthering a division in African American culture and by identity here, and versus in the American melting pot that I grew up and love, that we try to blend things. And so I just hope this is not being directed in a divisional way and more in a binding way. Now, that was more of a statement.
That's more of a statement too. Would you want to respond
Well,
later?
no, thank you. I appreciate.
You're
Oh,
recognized.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Brickens. I appreciate your candor around that. No, that is not the intent of this. And you are right about markers being destroyed and, the time it takes to get them back up. And it is happening in a lot of places. I think we have an opportunity, however, with tourism to establish something like this and bring people to our state who want to know our history, as well as people within the state who, as we're traveling through the state, can learn and understand more of our history, not in a divisive way, more in a way of understanding, how the state, has grown. I mean, it's just wonderful, our state. And a lot of these things people just don't know. So my intent is to set up something where we can learn and understand more about our state. In 2026, we're going to be celebrating 250 years. That's an opportunity for the Historical Commission, I feel, to get the funding that you're talking about to, in fact, showcase how great our state is. So I'm more in that vein, not in a divisive way at all. Thank you for your comments, though.
Sure,
Really
well said.
appreciate it.
Chairman Bricken, follow up on that? No, he says no. Let's move on to Chairman Eldridge. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We spoke about some history up in my area during subcommittee, and we have two historic African American colleges up there, Knoxville College and Morristown College. And I had the opportunity to work on the buildings at Morristown College. and I watched them fall into ruin. After the college was closed, it was just left pretty much abandoned. It was vandalized, and it was sad to watch. And when you brought that bill, it kind of, I started looking at some of the history there. 7 out of 9 of the buildings were on the historic registry of places in this country. 7 out of 9 buildings. The architectural styles, I thought this was interesting. Colonial Revival, Georgian Revival, Queen Anne, late Victorian. The buildings were beautiful, but it was also a home a place where a lot of the African American people in our area went to be educated, become teachers and things. So I wonder in my mind, and I think you and I talked about this, if something like this had been in place at that time, could some of those buildings have been saved? It might not have been continued as a college, but it could have continued as a community center. It was in the center of Morristown. There's a park there now, which that's fine and good, but those buildings would have been so much nicer and so much prettier to be there. And even if they were just a couple of them in that park. So I support your bill. I think it's a good idea. I support anything that's going to salvage history. And, coming from Morristown, we've not always done that up there. And it was sad after working on those buildings and seeing the beauty that was inside of them. Laurel Yard Hall had a beautiful stained glass window over the main entrance of it. The gymnasium had some of the prettiest hardwood floors I believe I'd ever seen. So I support what you're doing. I think, I just wish it had been around earlier. Thank you.
Follow up to
Mr.
that,
Chairman.
Chair Lady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate that.
Okay, very good. We're going to move now. Any follow-up then further, Chairman Eldridge? None? Okay. We're going to move now on to Leader Johnson. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm out of order, but I have a new constituent in the audience, Zach Bell. Zach, would you stand up? And he has his father with him. He has his father with him today, Mike Bell.
All right. Thank you, Speaker. We are still got a lineup of questions. We want to turn our attention now to Chairman Terry. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Leader, for bringing this legislation. I do support it, and I just wanted to bring out the point. Obviously, we're a united nation, and history is important to all of us. We don't want to repeat bad parts of history, and that for me, it's actually sparked an idea. With the one of the representatives here from Davidson County. I'm Native American, and from a history standpoint, the impact that Tennessee had and Andrew Jackson had, the Indian Removal Act, the first tribe that was removed was my tribe, and so having you don't want history watered down, so having things that you focus on, whether it's African American or Native American history and the impact that Tennessee had on that, we don't want to lose that, and so that the next generation realizes what we've had, and so we don't repeat that. So again, I support your legislation. Sparked my interest in potentially from a Native American standpoint, but we're trying to get the cultural center funded and up and running, so that's a big deal. I did want to ask you. I saw in here increased state revenue on because you're going to go to finance, assuming this passes, going through. How do you get an increased state revenue on this?
Okay, Leader.
Praise the
You're
Lord.
recognized.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to be around the tourism that it's going to attract and the economic impact that's going to have.
Okay.
I have to consult again with fiscal on that. from historical, yes. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So if you look at the fiscal note, the last, if you have it in front of you, yeah, the last statement there talks about increasing, and that is from the gifts and the grants and the donations that will be provided. This will create seed money for them to go out and get additional funding to grow the fund, as well as the investments from the treasurer will have to invest these funds. And so the monies off of those investments will be the monies that will be used in order to restore the buildings or to grant out. So it'll be donations and gifts, but also from the treasurer's investment of the funds.
Follow up, Chairman.
thank
No, he
you.
says no.
thank you.
Let's move on. We got a lineup here. Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to thank you, Leader, for bringing this bill. I think anything that we can do to celebrate and share the message of all the good work and critical work and critical in many different ways contributions of many African Americans, some who go unrecognized still to this day, is extremely important. I know, appreciate my colleague from Rutherford County. We are trying to, the Indigenous Peoples Cultural Center, we're trying to establish that would be in my district. I'm very proud of that. But I'm also very proud of all the significant contributions. And one thing that strikes me, significant contributions of African Americans, one thing that strikes me is how some of the most important civil rights movement and actions took place in Tennessee. And just like we are losing many veterans that have fought in the war, we too are losing those civil rights leaders. And now and we don't want to forget their contributions and celebrate that. And I think naturally this would be something that I personally would be very interested. I know many people and my friends and people in my area would love to know more and would want to visit and know more about these places. And so there's a great history to be taught and to be learned. And I thank you for celebrating, honoring the contributions of African Americans in Tennessee.
Thank you.
Follow up?
No, thank you. Thank you. for the
Leader
comments.
says
I appreciate it.
no. Well said, Representative Powell. All right, Chair Lady Carringer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a couple of statements as what my colleague did from Upper East Tennessee. Being from Knoxville and growing up with knowing Knoxville College, hearing about it all my life. And when someone came to my office to speak about your bill, I brought this up to him and he said, oh, well, it's interesting because my colleague from Upper East Tennessee had mentioned it. But I did want to say, Knoxville College was built in 1862, and it was the first organized school for Blacks. And it went through the same thing of just deteriorating. Beautiful campus, just beautiful buildings, architect, and the stories of how the buildings were built by students with the bricks, and just a lot of history there. So it did it's temporarily reopened some areas in 2018. But it was first opened for a liberal arts college. And also, I know in Knoxville, we very much have worked very hard on trying to get funds to keep the buildings maintained, although there's still a lot of work. And it's right there in the downtown area of Knoxville. So I've grown up hearing about Knoxville College. So thank you for bringing this. I am about protecting our historic areas and our beautiful buildings and architect. So with that statement, I would also like to call for the question.
Okay.
The Miller Rule.
No. Later, follow up.
No,
on
thank
that
you
one?
so much for sharing that with
I'm
us.
sure.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
All right, Chairman Jernigan, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Previous question.
Yeah, I'll call for a previous question. I see no objection, so let us move forward in voting for House Bill 2828. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. And you, leader, are moving on to GovOps. We just wish you our best when it comes to financing. You know that.
Thank you, Mr.
You know
Chairman
that.
and committee. Thank you all so much.
You're welcome. All right, let's go to item number 6. And our distinguished Chairman Todd is bringing to us House Bill 2880. And I've got a motion and a second. I see no amendments. Chairman Todd, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill addresses a matter that was brought up during a rulemaking process with the TWRA, Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, where they sought public comment. The bill makes a correction that is necessary from a biological and scientific basis in that the statute, which goes back about 70 years or more, using an incorrect biological definition. Plants are poisonous, snakes are venomous. So what this does, it rectifies this incorrect language use in statute. And I had hoped that the agency had provided some samples. I don't know if I see any from here or not, but if they didn't, we'll just have to imagine. But with that, I'll renew my.
Well, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. We're very saddened on that note, but we're going to now turn our attention to Chairman Powers. Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the question I have, we actually in my area, we had a snake handling group or groups, I should say. Anyway, in the past, and they did a documentary on it, so we made a TV and all that. But I guess what they were wanting to do at that time was to outlaw or do away with the fine for this. And I was looking at the bill. I didn't see any reference or anything to the fine in the repercussions of doing this. Is the fine, is it still $50? Is that still the fine for mistreating or mishandling these?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This doesn't change anything with that. It just corrects a biological difference that is incorrect in the statute from poisonous to venomous.
Chairman Powers.
Okay, so there's no change as far as the amount of fine or anything like that as far as what it was just talking about it was illegal, and so I just wondered if that it changed it to a misdemeanor or whatever. But okay, so it's still $50. Is that correct, Mike Bell? He won't answer, will he? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Powers. 2, Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Sticking with the same theme here in tourism, seems to be the record of the day. Believe it or not, but we actually had an issue down on Broadway where people were basically using snakes to try to solicit money. And it became a pretty significant problem. And our city was able to prohibit those types of things. And, so I actually appreciate what you're doing here. I think that just simple change makes a lot of sense. Out of curiosity, do you know how many venomous snakes we have in Tennessee?
Chairman Todd.
Thank you. I would, as far as types of venomous snakes, I could probably count 4 or 5. And granted, you could lump several into one category, like rattlesnakes. We have different kinds of rattlesnakes, so that's why I was thinking of dividing those. But something like that.
Back to you, Representative Powell. No, he says no. We're now on to. Let's move to Representative McCalmon. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Move previous question.
Representative McCalmon called for the previous question. Any objections? I see none. Let's vote. That puts us in the voting bracket. Those in favor of House Bill 2880, please say aye. Those no, the ayes have it. And you, Chairman, are moving on to CNR, calendar and rules, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Congratulations. And next we have item number 7, House Bill 2588 by Chairman Russell. You already have a motion and a second. No amendments. Chairman Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. House Bill 2588 would add an exception to the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement members who hold an elected or appointed board member position with a special school district or local government to retire from another TCRS employer and begin drawing benefits without resigning their elected or appointed position. With that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
All right, you heard an explanation of the bill, members. Some of you are having to go out to introduce bills. Let's try to keep us quorum here if we can. Any questions to the sponsor this time? Got a call for the question? I see no objection. Let us move forward in voting for House Bill 2588. Those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. And you, Chairman, are headed also to calendar and rules, sir.
Thank you all.
Our best to you. Item number 8, House Bill 2315, our distinguished Chairman, on House Bill 2315, our distinguished Chairman Williams, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and members. House Bill 2315 was brought to me by the Treasurer. This bill authorizes the state of Tennessee's 457B and 403B plans to comply with the requirements enacted by Congress in the Secure Act 2.0. It also goes so far as to establish non-qualified compensation plans under Section 457F by the Internal Revenue Code, would provide tax deferred compensation for employees that are considered highly compensated or in management level positions. With that, Mr. Chairman, members, I'm
Good.
happy to answer
Okay,
any
sure.
questions.
Good explanation. All right. We do have a question already lining up here. Representative Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
Well, all right. Previous question has been called. Any objections? I see none. Let us vote. Those in favor of House Bill 2315, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. And you are moving also to calendar and rules, Chairman. Thank you for being with us today. Item number 9, House Bill 2141 by Representative Hammer. You are recognized, but you, sir, have an amendment on this one, and we're going to ask for your tracking code. We have a motion and a second, and we also got amendment. Now, could you give us that tracking code, sir, please?
Yes, sir. It is 013888.
0138 you're right. That is that is correct. So we got a motion and a second. Let's get this amendment on his bill. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. It is now Representative Hammer on your own House Bill 2141. Would you please give us an explanation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you for legal for providing a technical correction amendment. But this bill simply is increasing the penalties for any related game and fish violations that are currently in law from $10 to $50 up to $500 decided by a judge. I started working on this bill last year when I had a trespasser on one of my leases that got a cell cam picture of, and TDBRA was did a great job of finding this individual and catching them. But got to looking into this issue and found out how prevalent it is. We've had, looking at the stats TDBRA has provided, we've had over 3,650 citations and 815 warnings since 2001. So it averages about 158 a year citations, 35 warnings. And so when you think about it, $10 is not a deterrent. It was in 1961 when this statute was put into place, and appreciate TDBRA working and going through all the statutes and updating their various fines, as well as other entities like Congressional Sportsman Foundation and Farm Bureau that have come out and helped this bill. But with that, happy to take any questions.
Sure. Good explanation. We do have Representative Butler with question.
I think this is a good piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a constituent calling just this week because somebody was trespassing on their property and stealing ginseng. Which, if you're aware, it's fairly valuable stuff. And in rural areas, there's a lot of guys that make a living collecting ginseng. So I would love to see an amendment on your bill to include ginseng, but thank you for this bill.
Yes. Response on that?
No, thank you. Yeah,
Representative?
be happy to look into that if it fits the captions. I think one of the things that, like I said, I learned from talking to many in the industry and TD Beret is how prevalent this has become. We've done some things in the past couple of years to help. We did purple paint law and other things, but it still doesn't make a big issue if it's only $10. Like I said, it's a lot cheaper than a hunting lease, and so that's why it's become a problem.
Very good. All right. Representative Powell, did I get a indication from you? Yes, you're recognized, sir.
So question, the TWA can levy this fine. Can you still bring a civil action against somebody that does this?
Representative?
I do not know the question. Might want to rely on legal or for TWA for that answer.
Well, we'd have to go to. You ready for all right. Well, let's okay. We're going to go out of session, and we're going to defer to our counsel, Mr. Matt Mundy.
Thank
Mr.
you, Matt
Mundy.
Mundy from legal. This bill doesn't impact the ability of someone to have a private civil action. So to the extent that that exists, and I'm not that familiar with the civil actions under this title for wildlife resources, but this doesn't change that law.
Follow up, Representative Powell.
No, that answered my question. Thank you.
Sure. Any further questions to our counsel? I see none. All right. Whoop. All right. Wait a minute. Okay. Was that a question? Okay. I'm sorry. We're back in session. Representative Hammer, I think we have a question from Representative McCalman. Okay. Was that a question? I'm sorry, sir. Call for the question. All right. We got a call for the question. No objections? None. I see none. Let us vote. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. And you, Representative Hammer, you're on your way to Finance, Ways and Means, sir. Congrats.
Thank you, members of the committee and chairman.
All right. We're now on, just to note, 15 minutes and counting, members. So we are headed now to item number 10. House Bill 2716. No amendments. Representative Garrett, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this House Bill 2716 does that under Article 2, Section 15 of our Tennessee State Constitution, where there's a vacancy in one of the seat here in the House or a seat in the Senate, and if that vacancy is had by an expulsion, then the member that is expelled cannot be reappointed by their local authority. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to take any questions.
That's the 10,000-foot view, correct? All right. Yes, we are lining up with questions to you, Mr. Garrett, or Representative Garrett. I'm sorry. Chairman Jernigan, you're recognized. You're up.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Representative, you're saying that our Constitution, the founders believed the representatives could not succeed themselves under Article 2, Section 15. Is that correct?
Representative Garrett.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Chairman Jernigan.
Thank you. So when the two representatives that were expelled last year for disorderly conduct, and the local legislative bodies appointed them back under Article 2, Section 15, was that constitutional?
Representative Garrett.
I don't have any idea if that's constitutional or not. You'd have to ask that to the Attorney General or someone that can opine. This piece of legislation would be from now going forward.
Okay.
Chairman Jernigan.
Thank you. So I'm going to assume that it was constitutional because there were no lawsuits filed before last year. And I'm assuming that if it was constitutional, that this bill, I'm not sure what would address what you wanted to accomplish, because if it was constitutional, then you might want to bring a constitutional amendment similar to what Richie's doing, similar to what Chipper Powers is going to be doing,
Because I think under Article 2, Section 12, when they talk about determining the House rules, expelling a member, that they could not come back for a second time. You couldn't charge them the second time for the same offense. So I think clearly that the founders thought that they would come back at some time. So we're kind of really talking about what are the qualifications to succeed themselves. And Chairman, if you don't mind, can I go out of session and ask the legal question real quick?
We will do that. Chairman Jernigan. We are now out of session.
I guess my question to legal is, who is qualified to be a successor? I guess in this scenario.
Mr. Mundy.
Thank you. Matt Mundy from legal. Generally, a person who is a successor, we would just start with the definition of successor, which is just a person who succeeds the predecessor in office and assumes those duties, rights, and powers of the predecessor. The definition itself isn't helpful in terms of whether you can succeed yourself as who is the predecessor or not. I think that in looking at our Constitution in terms of succession, that the court would look at the various provisions on succession to determine what exactly that means. For instance, the Speaker's provision for succession says the Speaker shall serve in each House a term of 2 years until his successor is elected and qualified. And we know from tradition that both the current speakers have succeeded themselves. We know traditionally that there's nothing restricting the members of this body or this committee from succeeding themselves. Most of these members probably wouldn't be here if they couldn't succeed themselves. And the governor obviously can succeed himself with the express limitation of not being able to serve more than 2 consecutive terms. So I think that tells us pretty clearly that these particular constitutional officers, including members of the House, can succeed themselves. I think the second question, if I may, Chairman, is who is qualified to succeed themselves? And we have a qualifications clause in the Constitution. There's 4 qualifications to be a member. You have to be a citizen of the United States, 21 years of age, a citizen of this state for 3 years, and a resident of the county you represent for 1 year. Those are the 4 basic qualifications to be a member of the House. The Senates are roughly the same with different requirements for residency and age. But I think just to say this to respectfully, I think there is some question as to the constitutionality of this bill. And would suggest that it would be better served if it was done by constitutional amendment. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the express House expulsion rules under Article 2, Section 12, it specifically states that the House may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member, but not a second time for the same offense. So it seems fairly clear to me, and I'm not saying that I'm absolutely right. This would be a case of first impression, and the bill would be given a presumption of constitutionality until someone had standing to file a lawsuit, and then a court would be able to adjudicate it on its merits. But it seems to me clear that the framers of the Constitution anticipated an expelled member coming back and serving in the body, because they specifically put right after their expulsion authority the language, you can't expel them twice for the same offense. That provision, that language isn't qualified. There's no proviso. It doesn't say that it applies to the interim successor or a successor elected at a subsequent special or general election. So that's why I think that this may be problematic, but reasonable minds can disagree, and I know that the sponsor does. And I think it's a healthy debate to have for the committee, and they can take their decision, take that under advisement.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. I do want to remind everyone we're 7 minutes and counting. Quickly, back to you, Chairman Jernigan. Any follow-up
I
questions
have
to
no
council
follow-up-
from
no
you?
follow-up questions for
No,
legal.
he says none. Representative Powell, I see your hand to council.
So for council, can you speak to, so presently, when a member is expelled or there's a vacancy in their office, can you read that part about who has the authority to make that replacement?
Mr. Mundy.
Thank you, Matt Money from Legal. Article 2, Section 15 on vacancies. There's two provisions depending on the timing of the vacancy when it occurs. And we're talking about in this bill a very narrow period of time between the time a vacancy occurs and the special or general election that's held to fill the term permanent or fill the seat permanently. But it says in both parts, the legislative body of the replaced legislator's county of residence at the time of his or her election may elect an interim successor to serve until the election.
Representative Powell.
Thank you for that.
Quickly, please.
My follow-up question to that is, so, and the governor has to call a special election, but the legislative body, and it's not where I represent a municipal government, but if in a situation where that member represents multiple counties, it's where that member currently resides. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Representative Powell. The legislative body of the replaced legislator's county of residence. So if you represented more than one county, it would be where he actually resides.
Representative Powell, quickly.
So I guess and I can get back to the sponsor on this, but I guess one issue then, if that process would not change, you would still, even though that member was expelled, you would still choose a replacement from that person's county. It just under this could not be that member. Is that correct?
Mr. Mundy.
I think the sponsor will agree with me in saying that's correct. The idea is not to change the county's authority to elect the interim successor, but it's just to prohibit an expelled member, if the vacancy is created from expulsion, from that member coming back and serving just for the interim. They could still run in a subsequent special or general election.
Representative Powell.
So essentially what this is doing, then I guess we're taking, well, it's doing a couple things, but it's also taking away the power from the local legislative authority to make that decision. Is that under the, so that it's taken away, so they would no longer be able to select that local authority?
Mr. Mundy.
If the bill passes, they would not be able to re-elect a member who's been expelled to fill the interim vacancy.
Okay, Representative Powell. Now, here's where we are. We're positioned. We're 3 minutes down, folks. We have to be respectful for our next committee that's coming in. But again, we're out of time here, and also we're out of session, so we need to get back into session. Is there anything else that we need to ask the council here? We'd have to make it quick. Okay, I see none. We're back in session now. All right.
I still have the floor.
Pardon? Yes, Chairman Jernigan, we left you dangling there.
Yeah,
You're up.
I'll just end it with that. I think that under the qualifications in the Constitution, that there's nothing that says they can't secede themselves. And I think that would probably just be better served as a constitutional amendment. And that's all I have, Representative. And thank you for entertaining me. Chairman, thank you for being patient with me.
In all fairness to you, sponsor, do you want to follow up on that? I hope it's a quick one.
I'll try to make it quick.
A quickie.
In one point, we did have much conversation in drafting this piece of legislation, but I would be mindful that the committee needs to consider that in each instance, when you're talking about succeeding yourselves, whether it's we elect the speaker or you elect yourself or the people elect you in your respective elections, is that you succeed yourself only when you're elected. You don't succeed yourself when you get expelled here. You get reappointed. So there's a hugely vast difference between the constitutionality of an election coming back here rather than by appointment. So I want to make it clear that that's the issue of first impression. That's never happened here in the state of Tennessee, where someone has been expelled and then the authority reappointing them reappoints that same person. You look at the language in Article 2, Section 15, and I'll wrap up, Mr. Chairman, is that it has a successor and such successor language. That does not refer to the person that was expelled. The next sentence that talks about who can appoint is the replaced legislator. You cannot replace yourself. So the drafters of our Constitution intended that if someone acts in a disorderly manner and get expelled, the Constitution already says that that person cannot be reappointed because they cannot succeed themselves and they cannot replace themselves. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll wrap up.
Thank
and
you,
realize this may
Chair
go to
Lady
the next-
Littleton. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll call for the question.
Got a call for the question. There is objection. All right, we are up for a vote on the call of the question. Clerks, be alive down there. All right, those in favor of call for the question, please say or wait a minute. Say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. So we've got a call for the question. And the objection, we're past the objection. I have no problem with that. We will do a roll call. Yes, clerk.
Representatives Alexander. Representative Alexander votes aye. Representative Bricken. Representative Bricken votes aye. Representative Butler. Butler votes aye. Representative Carringer. Carringer votes aye. Representative Chisholm. Chisholm votes no. Representative Dixie.
No.
Dixie votes no. Representative Haston. Representative Haston votes aye. Representative Holsclaw. Representative Holsclaw. Representative Hurt. Representative Hurt. Representative Jernigan. Representative Jernigan votes no. Representative Johnson. Representative Johnson votes aye. Representative Leatherwood. Representative Leatherwood votes aye. Representative Littleton. Littleton votes aye. Representative McCalman. McCalman votes aye. Representative Miller. Miller votes no. Representative Pearson. Representative Powell.
No.
Powell votes no. Representative Powers. Powers votes aye. Representative Rudder. Rudder votes aye. Representative Terry. Terry votes aye. Vice Chair Eldridge. Eldridge votes aye. Chairman Kiesling.
Aye.
Kiesling votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the ayes are 14, the noes are 5.
Ayes 14 votes and the noes are 9. We declare House Bill 2716 passed. You will be moving on to calendar and rules. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
Members, we are the remainder of the calendar. We're going to be rolling to the top of next week's calendar. I do need a motion to adjourn. Yes, and we got a second. We're adjourned.